Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Wave 3 of our Aimpoint Research presentation this afternoon online. Appreciate those folks who have engaged here with us this afternoon, and those that may be watching at a later time. Thanks for reviewing the recording as well. You know, in addition to wanting to know what's going on in the farm broadcasting world with farmers and ranchers and farm radio listeners across the country, we're also wanting to know what's going on with consumers. And so we've got a bit of a different twist for you on this research webinar, where we're going to have presentations not only about NAFB's research that's been conducted, that's available for you on the NAFB website, but also about some consumer trends taking place as well. If you participated in these webinars in the past, you're familiar with Tommy Batts, who's research analyst at Aimpoint Research and is the research manager for our project. Tommy plays a key role in the design, implementation, and reporting of both quantitative and qualitative research for the clients of Aimpoint. Then Jennifer Coleman is going to be joining us as well. We've worked with Jennifer throughout this process here at Aimpoint. Jennifer is the Director of Communications and is responsible for the development and implementation of communications and marketing strategies, as well as overseeing initiatives including brand development, messaging, positioning, and go-to-market strategies and integrated communication plans.
Hey.
And then prior to joining Aimpoint Research, I should note that Jennifer served as the Director of Communications for the Ohio Soybean Council and the Ohio Soybean Association, where she managed all communications. One other reminder here for you as I turn over hosting duties to Tommy this afternoon. If you haven't done so already, please make sure that you mute your microphones, and then later on when we have a chance for Q&A, you can unmute either by clicking that on your screen, or you can press and hold your space bar like the old walkie-talkie days to make your microphone where it can be heard. So I'm going to turn over hosting duties to Tommy Batts this afternoon. He'll get things started, and then transition over to Jennifer with some of the consumer trend and consumer insights as well. So thanks, Tommy. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Having both of us. Let me get this figured out. Okay. Can you see my screen? Great. Well, thanks for being here all today. Glad to be a part of this. Going over Wave 3 results, Quarter 3 results from our year-long survey. So we do a survey each quarter to discuss the results of listenership research. And before I jump into those results, I'd like to tell you more about Aimpoint if you haven't heard from our previous presentations. So Aimpoint Research is a global strategic intelligence firm specializing in agri-food. And our leaders are some of our leaders are former military intelligence officers who spent portions of their careers using strategic intelligence to keep our country safe. And other members of our team have spent most of their career, if not all of it, in agriculture, and some actively farm today. No matter what the background is of the team members on Aimpoint, everyone at Aimpoint believes that the success of the U.S. agri-food system is essential to national security. And it's that core belief that drives why we do what we do. So we blend military intelligence techniques and cutting-edge market research capabilities to help our clients understand what's really happening in the marketplace, what's going to happen in the future, and what organizations can do to be successful in that future. And that is our role here with NAFB, to partner with NAFB and provide you with strategic intelligence through this radio listenership research. We're conducting this quarterly market research study to understand listeners' habits and perspectives throughout the year. And this research should provide you with the context needed to cater to listeners and showcase the value of farm broadcasting to your constituents and advertisers. And so here are some high-level highlights from the Wave 3 survey of ag radio listeners across the US. Some of the highlights here. Biggest thing, one of the takeaways is that there's lower engagement in Wave 3. Ag radio and television engagement has remained steady though, and ag farm publications are down in Wave 3. So these are the top 3 sources of information for each wave. And overall, we see engagement across daily news sources for farm news, weather, markets, and ag information is down. Everything in the red here. We took the average number of sources respondents selected from the last question to see how many sources farmers typically use. Are they using radio, television, and publications? Are they using just one of those? And this chart emphasizes that the engagement is down in the third wave across age groups. And though engagement is down, we see farmers are receiving a larger variety of types of information. Farmers are preparing for harvest. While ag markets, commodity prices, and ag weather remain a priority for them and the types of information they receive, farmers have been interested in a variety of types of information in Wave 3. And farmers rely on farm radio as a place for that wide variety of information. And looking at the average amount of types of information selected from the last question, the increase is driven primarily by farmers in the 18 to 44 age category and 55 to 64 years old. And while ag listenership is remaining consistent, the amount of minutes spent listening to ag radio is down. A larger portion of people said that they're listening less than 30 minutes in Wave 3. And while engagement is generally down, we did notice some consistency. Listenership has remained high during early morning hours, and listenership even increases with age in the morning. The older you are, the more likely you are to listen in the morning. And so this slide and the next slide have remained steady across each wave, but we wanted to show it to you to just show how noteworthy it is. Farmers continue to rate farm broadcasters, so you, as high in credibility, accuracy, and timeliness. Whereas farmers continue to rate national media outlets as not credible, not accurate, and not timely. And so those are some high-level highlights. We saw a number of consistency across every question throughout the survey, or a lot of questions throughout the survey. But we want to give you the things that really changed. And even when engagement is down, as we see in Wave 3, the value of farm radio remains high. It is a primary source for daily ag information, even in slower times of the year. And it is seen as a place to receive a wide variety of information. So again, high-level highlights. I'm happy to answer any questions of things maybe that weren't touched on here, or if there's specific questions about some of the slides I did show.
And remember, you can unmute by either holding your space bar and letting your microphone work, or just clicking the unmute button on the bottom left side of your screen, and see if you have any questions there for Tommy. This would be a great time to ask those. Okay, hearing none, let's continue to move forward. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks so much. I will go ahead and hand this over to Jennifer, who will talk to you guys more about some of the trends and future happenings in the industry. Now it looks like my Zoom got really small. How do I?
Where's the music for technical difficulties? Oh, while Tommy's doing that, I just wanted to introduce myself again a little bit. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Coleman, as Tom introduced me. I have spent the last 14 years of my career in ag communications. So I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of NAFB members, and that's been a lot of fun. And it's really fun in my new role here at Aimpoint. I've been here for about a year now, to have the opportunity to work with NAFB and provide some additional insights as well, in addition to the survey data. So looking forward to the conversation. All right.
So you should be the host. There.
Right, here we go. Oops. All right, everybody see my screen? All right. Well, as Tommy said, Aimpoint Research, we're a global strategic intelligence firm. We do a lot of market research, very similar to what Tommy just went over, but we also do some additional research and intelligence gathering on other types of issues. And one of those issues that we really follow closely is consumers. We look at what consumers are doing and how that's going to affect the agri-food value chain as the different things and movements and the evolution of what they're asking for from their food begins to pop up in the agri-food value chain and what we actually see happen in the industry. And so what I want to do today is talk about some very high level trends of consumers, what they're looking for, and then how that is beginning to manifest in different things that we're seeing actually on the ground, and how some of those themes get woven into things that we're going to see not just now, but also in the future. So first, just a level set on consumers in general. Who are we talking about? I mean, we talk about consumers, in 2019, millennials finally surpassed baby boomers and Gen X to become the largest US adult generation. But pay attention over in the right there on Gen Z. That's a big population, and they're coming of age as well, and they're going to have tremendous buying power. So we're not just talking about millennials anymore. We're talking about Gen Z, and soon we'll be talking about Alpha Gen as well. Now, it's also true that different generations are indeed different, but it's also important to remember that emerging food trends that we're seeing are actually being driven by all generations that have buying power. In a recent consumer survey that Aimpoint conducted, we try to gauge just overall interest in food and agriculture, and just wanted to point out a few highlights here. For example, 64% of consumers are thinking about where their food comes from. 89% of consumers believe food companies have an obligation to be transparent. 78% of consumers prefer to eat from local farmers and sources. Now, 81% also report that they have visited a farm. And as us in agriculture know, that could be a wide variety of farms when they say they visited a farm. It could have been an agritourism farm. It could have been a modern production farm. Not quite sure yet, but they do feel that they have had an opportunity to visit a farm. 89% are frequenting farmers markets, and 66% of consumers prefer food organically produced. And the reasons behind that will become a little bit clear here. One of the big trends, and this is not a recent trend, this has been happening for a long time now, consumers want less chemicals, fewer additives in their food. And this is one of the driving factors driving them toward organic foods. But they want additional ingredients. They want fresh foods. They want healthy foods, but they want less stuff in that food. And we're beginning to see that trend kind of manifest in a lot of trends in the grocery store as well. Now, one thing that has really happened recently is, in addition to fewer chemicals on their food, consumers are really interested in the health factor of their food. And I can tell you that based on our research, COVID did nothing but accelerate this trend toward focusing on the health of their food. In fact, one of our most recent surveys of consumers found that 55% of those surveyed had purchased food to target specific health benefits within the last 30 days. So they're getting very specific about what they're looking for, and you'll start to see that trend manifest as we go through the talk a little bit more. Food companies are responding to this trend. It's not just something that we're tracking. I think it's being seen across the value chain, and food companies are definitely responding. In addition to their sustainability claims, food companies are now beginning to make claims about reducing pesticides, fertilizer, and other types of chemicals and additives on their food products. Now, we talk about they want fewer chemicals, they want healthier food. They also want something that is environmentally friendly. We're seeing really high percentages of consumers reporting that they would support a government mandated environmental impact score. For example, 57% report that they'd be willing to pay more for the food if it had a lower environmental impact score. So what this is telling us is that consumers are really demanding and not or. And what do I mean by that? I mean that consumers are not going to want to go to the grocery store and have to choose between a healthy food and a food that's they feel is environmentally friendly. They're going to expect both. They want and food companies are going to find a way to give that to them. Now, when it comes to purchasing food, the Center for Food Integrity has done extensive consumer research, and we work closely with them. And what they have found is that shared values, trust, is 3 to 5 times more important than the facts when it comes to building trust in the food system. We see that in our own research as well. 63% of consumers say knowing the source of their food increases their trust as well. And you'll begin to see that as we go through and talk a little bit more about traceability. Another big trend, a big consumer trend that's happening is this concept of personalization. So you and I both know that, we're almost, it's just ingrained into how we live our lives in a lot of ways anymore. If you think about Netflix, you get on Netflix and it'll give you recommendations based on what you've already watched, on what you might also like to see. Amazon is also doing things like that. A lot of the beauty care industry and personal care industry is beginning to curate specific recommendations based on your personalized skincare needs, for example. So, I can go onto many of these companies' websites, fill out a form about my skin or my preferences, and then they will customize a box for me and send it to me. So this concept of personalization in the products that we buy is becoming an expectation. So high level, you may have already detected a few themes in there, but when we talk about, some of those big macro trends, what we're really talking about, the big themes are trust. Excuse me. Sorry. Technical difficulty. So when we talk about those big themes, what we're really talking about is trust. They're focused on health. They're focused on sustainability, specifically environmental sustainability, and the personalization of their food. So the trends that we really are beginning to see manifest, all of those big themes are really starting to play out through 3 big trends: traceability and transparency in the food supply, a concept called food as medicine, and alternative proteins. So as we go through and I talk about what we're seeing in these spaces, see if you can see where those big themes are starting to have an impact. First, we're going to look at transparency and traceability. Now, what is food traceability? It's the ability to follow the movement of a product and its ingredients through all steps in the supply chain, both backward and forward. It involves documenting and linking the production, processing, and the distribution chain of food products and ingredients. Now, I know in my own experience in agriculture, I think a lot of us in agriculture, we think of traceability and we think about this. We think about consumers wanting to know what's happening on the farm so that they can make choices about the products that they buy. But we need to think about it a little bit bigger, because as data and technology becomes more and more ingrained into the agri-food system, you're going to see the ability to have data come back to the farms about what consumers are buying. And it's going to go all the way back down the value chain and all the way up. So this is not just a one-directional type of concept. It's a multi-directional concept, and it's going to really connect the agri-food value chain of the future. It's not just the consumer trends that are driving this, though. There are other drivers that will create the impact of traceability and the need to implement traceability across the agri-food value chain. For example, food recalls. In 2015 alone, Ohio State University estimated that their total loss for foodborne illness and food recalls was over $77 billion. So this isn't just a consumer trend of consumers wanting to know where their food comes from that's driving this issue. It's also a monetary driver. Technology is beginning to catch up. We know that it's easier in the meat industry, it's easier in the fruit and vegetable industry, although they have their challenges when it comes to traceability as well. It's even more challenging in grain and certainly much more challenging in commodities, but the technology is catching up. Between things like barcodes and sensors in grain bins and blockchain technology, and even technology that we're tracking, where you can spray a DNA code on the top of a grain cart onto the soybean that would be able to be tracked on the soybean and scanned, a DNA code on a coating on a soybean. These types of technologies are being looked at, they're being developed. And we believe that all of this advancement is going to allow traceability to be implemented across the supply chain. Data-driven ag is going to reshape agriculture and the agri-food supply chain of the future. In addition to technologies that are being developed by agriculture companies that are that we're much more familiar with, you're also going to see innovations coming from big companies like Amazon and Google. Another big trend that we're following is food as medicine. So food as medicine, what in the world are we talking about when we talk about food as medicine? Food as medicine is the concept of our current health and our long-term health is really affected by the food that we eat. And if you think about it, this isn't really a new concept for anyone in agriculture because we've been doing it in animals and livestock for generations. We think about what we feed that animal to keep them at optimal health. The consumers are beginning to think about that for their own personal health. What do I eat? What do I need to eat to achieve optimal health? And again, technology is beginning to catch up to provide that information to consumers. Now, as we mentioned before, a lot of consumers are reporting purchasing food that target specific health benefits within the last 30 days, 55%. Some of those benefits that they're specifically looking at, digestive issues, immune system, heart health, weight loss, anti-inflammation, all of these things are top of mind when consumers are looking to purchase food as medicine. And again, just like in traceability, it's not just consumer trends and something that the average consumer wants that's going to drive this. There's a monetary cost as well. We spend a lot of money in this country on healthcare costs. The government is paying attention and private insurance companies are also paying attention. And they're leaning into the concept of food as medicine and personalized nutrition with the hopes of driving down healthcare costs. So in addition to consumers driving it, private industry and government is going to drive impact in this area as well. Private companies, food companies are also looking at it, and they're beginning to lean into personalized nutrition. Kroger has a goal to cut $58 billion in healthcare costs by 2025. They're piloting a project with registered dietitians that work with Kroger and even offering telehealth services. This is a picture that I took of a local restaurant, Columbus, Ohio. I went to go get lunch, and I happened to snap a picture because I saw this, and at Aimpoint we were talking about food as medicine, and I saw that these were some of the ingredients that I had an option to put into my food. And you can see there it was listing not just the calories, but also the antioxidants, calcium, vitamins, beta carotene. So if I'm looking to get more B12 into my diet or more B vitamins into my diet, you might want to add some eggs. This is just an example of how these big macro trends are beginning to happen right now on a daily basis, and consumers are going to continue to see this kind of thing in their daily lives. Now, in addition to driving a lot of personalized nutrition and looking for healthier foods, this is also driving an interest in plant-based alternatives. 31% in an Aimpoint survey of consumers say that it's very likely they will be substituting meat with another form of protein during the week, which leads to our final big macro trend, which is alternative proteins, plant-based proteins. What's going on in this particular space? What we're seeing is that plant-based meats is a rapidly growing market with the potential to achieve double-digit market share of total retail meat in the very near future. They are expected to reach full taste, texture, and price parity with conventional animal proteins by only 2035, but most likely it will be sooner. Now, what are we really talking about? We often hear, well, vegetarianism and veganism isn't really growing at an accelerated rate, certainly not here in the US, but that's not really what we're talking about. Our surveys are showing that more and more people are consuming both. And so what we're really talking about is something called a flexitarian. So people don't identify as a flexitarian. It's not like I'm a vegan or a vegetarian. People aren't going around saying I'm a flexitarian. But what a flexitarian is, it's a person who eats both meat, traditional animal meat, and also plant-based alternatives. Now, we all know that protein demand around the world is growing at an accelerated rate. More and more protein is needed. But we're going to talk about that a little bit and how it's going to play into global demand and how plant-based alternatives are going to play into that. Now, we already rotate our protein. We don't eat beef every single day of the week. We don't eat chicken every single day of the week. We rotate. We might have beef on Monday, pork on Tuesday, and chicken on Wednesday. In the future, what you might see when we talk about more flexitarian diets is you might have pork chops on Monday, Impossible tacos on Tuesday, tofu on Wednesday, but I'm still going to want my beef pot roast on Saturday night. And oh, by the way, don't forget to pick up milk, honey, both dairy and almond, because everybody's going to want something a little bit different. Everybody's going to want a personalized nutrition plan. Now, again, we talk about growing protein demand, need for food, but we're also talking about these alternatives. So how does this really play out in the future? If you think about global protein demand as a plate, and that plate is getting bigger, we definitely know that's going to happen. And the natural assumption is that all of these traditional proteins are going to have to grow and to fill this plate and this demand. But we have alternatives that are entering the market, and they're going to take up a piece of that plate. That's for sure. The question is it going to be a little piece of the plate or a big piece of the plate? And that's a big question that we still have and we're still following. But it's something that people in agriculture can't take our eye off and can't be dismissive of. And oh, by the way, this isn't just a plate for people. It's a plate for pets. It's a plate for livestock. ADM has partnered with a French firm, InnovaFeed, to build what will be the largest insect protein for animal feed plant. And where are they building it? In the city of Decatur in central Illinois, right here in the heart of the Midwest. So when we talk about those big things that are happening, again, looking back on, we have trust. Consumers are looking for trust in their food. Health, they want healthier food. They want sustainable food. And they want it to be personalized to them. And then we look at these big macro trends, transparency, traceability, food as medicine, and alternative proteins. And you can see how some of these are beginning to, these big consumer trends and themes are woven in through the things that we're actually seeing happen throughout the value chain and have ripple effects down value chain. And I think it's really important as I close here to just, stay focused. As Tom said, there's a lot of information that I just kind of threw at you. But it's really important for us in Aimpoint because we have a vested interest in making sure that the agri-food system is successful. And one of the ways that we can be successful is to understand how these trends, what are the trends happening, and what are the ripple effects that will happen down value chain and affect all of us in our industry. It's good to be aware of that so that you can make plans now to adjust for that if it makes sense for your organization, and just be better leaders in the industry and have a better context for what's really happening out there. So with that, I know I went through that really fast, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You can hear me okay? DeLoss Yankee, RFD Radio, Illinois Farm Bureau. If survey respondents say they want more traceability, if they want to know where their food comes from, if they want fewer chemicals, and they also say that they want more alternative proteins, does that sort of conflict, or do you see conflicts like that? Do you search for conflicts like that, or some of the things seem to be talking out on both sides of their mouths?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, consumers can be a little fickle, but I will tell you, we have some intelligence that our analysts have worked on with regards and how traceability is affecting the plant-based meat and demand. And I'll tell you what our analysts found was that, in fact, when it comes to actual traceability, it's easier to provide direct traceability on the plant-based alternatives than it is if you were looking at like a soy-fed cow or a chicken, because it's more complex. There are more inputs into getting that piece of chicken on your plate that would have to be traced back, but it's a little bit more direct and simplified if it's something that is like a plant-based burger or soy-based burger, for example. So the traceability impact, when it comes to the alternative proteins, they've got an argument to be made there to help to appeal to consumers. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Other questions for Jennifer about some of that consumer trends that she shared here this afternoon?
If there are no other questions on the call, I do want to say that, and we can still answer any questions, but I do want to say that the information here provided is confidential information. However, if you have any additional questions after the presentation, feel free to reach out to Tommy or I, and we'd be happy to talk with you and answer any additional questions that you might have. We might see someone, no, not a direct question, just checking the chat.
All right, well, if there aren't any additional questions, thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Tommy, for the follow-up on NAFB's research. And Jennifer, thanks for sharing some things that are going on with consumer trends. I was noting the finite details there in the bottom of those slides about consumers. Pretty extensive study there with over 1,000 people surveyed, and appreciate you just sharing a perspective that impacts agriculture, but in a way outside of the agriculture circle that we typically talk about with research too.
Absolutely. It's important to have a view of all of the happenings across the value chain, I think, for all of us.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for attending this afternoon. We appreciate your time and attention. Remember, the research deck is available for NAFB on the website, nafb.com. If you're logged in, you can click more, and underneath the more menu, you'll see a tab for research, and you can get research there. Thanks again for your time. We'll look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.